Welcome to Construct Tech TV, and I'm Peggy Smedley. We have talked about public and private partnerships on this show quite a bit. Today I want to narrow in a bit more and give you a unique perspective on why it can help to rebuild our infrastructure. At its core, P3 is a cooperative agreement between public and private entities where risks and responsibilities are shared. The concept is not new. Countries across the globe have been using this model for many, many years. Even in the 1970s, the United States used it to build post office buildings. There was a big boom between 1993 and 1997. Developing countries had a total of $113 billion invested in P3s in 1997. The number of P3 projects declined quite a bit after that boom. However, now evidence suggests that P3s might once again be on the rise, especially considering the need to replace and upgrade outdated infrastructure. Now let's take a look at some of the numbers. World Bank Group support of P3 growth has helped it nearly triple in the last 15 years. Lending investments and guarantees have also increased, rising from $900 million in 2002 to $2.8 billion in 2016. Now here's another example. The Public-Private Infrastructure Advisory Facility has supported 169 knowledge activities and 1,164 technical assistant activities in 139 countries. Total approved expenditures amounted to $290 million. That gives you the global perspective. Here, many states have also created legislation in support of P3. Here's another big trend to watch. We are also seeing technology enabling transparency on these projects. Things like BIM, Building Information Modeling, and project management systems, which can help share data on all of these projects. There is definitely big benefits here that we will explore on this episode. But the opportunities go well beyond just P3s. We need to work together to establish the standards and transparencies that will enable P3s to be very successful. We will need it if we want to build this more modern and reliable infrastructure. I will challenge the industry a little bit more in my final segment today about the importance of establishing the building blocks and the needs for standards. But the underlying message is that we need a tool to help rebuild our infrastructure. We need something to bring together efficiency on our projects. We need better allocation of risk between the public and private entities on a project. We need it to do things for our governments to make more informed decisions quickly. This is the only way we will rebuild our water, our energy, and our transportation systems. With the right tool, we can engage all of the stakeholders. The real answer needs to be, will P3 be one of those tools for construction? Let's find out. You've heard me say it time and time again that we need to come together to solve our nation's infrastructure crisis. One way to do this is through P3s, also known as public and private partnerships. This is one way to address our nation's infrastructure needs. So let's dive in. Today I welcome Seth Gabriel, Director of Strategic Initiatives and Programs at the Association for the Improvement of American Infrastructure. Seth, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So Seth, let's talk about these P3s. I mean, we've talked about them a lot on this show, but how can cities and things like this how can they help with the infrastructure that we're talking about?
Well, thank you very much for asking. Public-private partnerships are just a financing tool. So cities, municipalities, counties can really utilize them in a variety of ways. First, they can find private sector partners that may not have ever worked in that city or that jurisdiction before. So bringing in new talent, new resources to an area. Second, for some municipalities, it may offer up innovative financing systems that they've never had before. So instead of just issuing traditional general obligation or project bonds, Through a P3, you have the whole gambit of private financing up to including equity in a project. Those opportunities allow municipality to look at projects that maybe they couldn't finance before, look at them in a new way, and look at the private sector as a real partner. And finally, it's that partnership aspect we really want to focus on. Instead of just building new infrastructure and then hoping for the best going forward, that infrastructure will be maintained appropriately. And if we're being honest, in a lot of cases, it's really never properly maintained. There's no constituency in most places for maintenance, unfortunately. We like to cut ribbons on new things and not really take care of it. Through that partnership, through that contract, really at the heart of a public-private partnership, it obligates both public sector and the private sector to maintain that asset through its whole life cycle.
So with all that you've said, what are some of the changes that have been occurring with the infrastructure right now?
So what we've been seeing here at AIAI is a real shift to more public-private partnerships and innovative project delivery, especially at the local and state level. The reason being is that a lot of these local governments are realizing that the maintenance backlog or the repairs they haven't been making over the years or decades to their facilities is really becoming a detriment to their economic growth and something that they have to address. And for many of them, it'd be very difficult for them to address on their own through traditional means of issuing general obligation bonds or project-based bonds. So they're starting to see public-private partnership and its access to private financing, capital, and expertise as a real possibility and opportunity for them to move their infrastructure forward.
And looking at that, it seems like there's some great opportunities, but yet there's some challenges. Are you seeing right now that AI is really trying to help these companies and individual organizations look at how they can move forward, not only today, but in several years down the road with these projects? Because we're talking about infrastructure, are not just a year project, they're multi-year projects.
Absolutely. I couldn't say that any better. The whole basis of a public-private partnership is looking at whole life cycle costs for a project. So what we're interested in, even more than the great design and construction, is this asset going to last, and will it be maintained appropriately over the many decades that will be utilized by the residents of that jurisdiction? So through AIAI, what we've done is working with the private sector to help bring expertise out to the public. And through our P3 Direct program, which is for the public sector only, we're helping to transfer some knowledge over to the public sector so that they're in a position that they can evaluate their projects, come up with a pipeline of projects that are viable for a public-private partnership, and move forward with those projects. Because you have to remember, public-private partnerships are not for every project. They're very complex. They take time. They do take a lot of money. So we want to find those right projects in every city, in every state, that can be better delivered to those residents, those citizens, through this partnership.
Well, we talk about city and state, but then how does the federal government then participate in this? Because I think we need some assistance there. I would assume that's what you're talking about as well, right?
Absolutely agree. So the federal government can help in a few ways. One, what they've been doing, providing loan opportunities through TIFIA, WIFIA, RIF, other programs targeted at different asset classes that really help lower the cost of capital for that project. They can then move forward, and what we're hoping to see out of the Build America Bureau in the future is really to become a center of excellence where they can help states and localities realize the opportunities through innovative project delivery, maybe provide some assistance through advisory grants, or bringing some of those private sector experts themselves from the federal government to the local level, help those local governments realize those opportunities. There's a lot more the federal government could do. It's just going to take some real policy at that level to realize that infrastructure is important, it's necessary, and we do need some leadership from the federal government to make this work.
We've been talking about infrastructure for a very long time. Is a lot of it about we just can't get on the same page about what we really need to be doing from both a state, city, federal government side, even from 3Ps? Is it just when we put it all together, not everybody seems to understand the need?
Absolutely. I think the real problem with infrastructure is that everyone knows it's important when it fails. And so you get in a situation where
that's a problem when it fails, right?
It is.
You can't
that's
say
when
that.
It happens. But that's when, especially if you look at water or wastewater, how many times do you think about your sewer system in your city? I bet you it's not until something breaks. And unfortunately, that's where we are. So we, as the industry, the community, the infrastructure community, both public, private, nonprofit, the media like you, and thank you for your interest in this, we need to do better at communicating to our fellow citizens and everyone who uses our infrastructure that what we're doing now is simply not adequate. It's costing us a lot of money to have these assets limp along. It's costing a lot of heartache and pain when people are stuck in traffic, and God forbid when you see bridge collapses, it's even worse. So we need to do better. We need to take the infrastructure that we've inherited, which has not been in great condition, and we need to make it the infrastructure of the future, or future generations of Americans are going to have a real problem having economic growth. And that's just going to take a concerted effort.
But we already know it's costing us in taxes and things like that by the delays and things like that. And as consumers, we should be raising our hands and screaming now to every politician about the expenses that we shouldn't be incurring now. Isn't that right?
We should. I think one of the problems with infrastructure is it's very difficult, or hasn't been done in a way that is communicated well to everyone, the true cost of poor maintenance of infrastructure. So I think most people, when they fill up their tank of gas or get on the subway, think of that point of sale, that cost. They really don't think about the cost of their time when there's a delay. I mean, they may acutely, but they don't really put a monetary value on it. They don't think about cost to their vehicle when the road's not well, or the time lost with their family when they're stuck in that train or go through an airport. Somehow we as the community need to present that to them in such a way that makes that dollar amount real. And I think we'll get there. And maybe that is a change we have to have as a community, where we need to go out of some older models of communication and one where it's a hashtag for infrastructure.
Hashtag, remember we had that discussion. Time is money, right? Time is money.
Hashtag infrastructure. This poor infrastructure is costing you, the citizen, a lot of money. And so don't think of that toll or that increase of fuel taxes as hurting you. It's counterintuitive, but if we spend a little bit more money now, we're going to save so much more money later on.
So we really need to just not wait till the infrastructure fails to be investing. We need to get everyone to understand investment needs to be now. And that's the hashtag campaign that needs to be had. And you and I had this conversation before we went on the air about that's the hashtag initiative that needs to occur now, right?
Absolutely. Hashtag infrastructure. If you could think of something better, we'll run with it. But
we got to work on that.
It needs to happen. Yep.
All right, well, I have to tell you, Seth Miller, Gabriel, Director of Strategic Initiatives and Programs, the Association for Improvement of American Infrastructure, thank you so much for your time. And I'm telling you, we're going to come up with a new hashtag, and we're going to make a louder voice for this. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much, Peggy. Talk to you anytime.
We need a federal plan in order to rebuild our failing infrastructure. While we've been saying it for years, it can't be reiterated enough on this show. Perhaps even more importantly, it starts with Congress. To help examine this topic of infrastructure policy, today I'm joined by Marshall Macomber, Senior Policy Advisor at the Association for the Improvement of American Infrastructure. Marshall, welcome to the show.
Hi, Peggy. Great to be with you today.
So let's talk about the federal infrastructure plan and what are the prospects overall. I think I really want to focus on P3s and what you think we have going forward.
You know, Peggy, I'm going to be the perpetual optimist here. You may not always have optimists on your show, but you're talking to an optimist today.
We need that right now.
Indeed. I got into this business several years ago because I looked out on the horizon and I felt like there was going to have to be more tools like P3 to leverage more of the types of private finance, different sources of capital, anything we can do to leverage our limited tax dollars that were available to build the next generation of public infrastructure projects of all type. I remain convinced to this day that P3 is going to continue to play a important and growing role in this debate because simply the resources are limited. And I think Congress and our governors and our mayors are going to continue to say, where can we be looking to find resources to build these critical infrastructure projects for tomorrow? So I'm an optimist.
So you're talking optimistically, but we're talking about Congress, and Congress has not been able to get their act together candidly. So is Congress opposed to P3s at this point? Is that what we've been seeing?
I think it's a great question. And I think at the end of the day, what Congress is for is infrastructure. I think everyone knows we've got more to do. I think 70%, if you look at polling out there, 70% of the American public wants to see Congress and the White House invest in our infrastructure. That is where we start in this debate. P3s are not the answer. It's a delivery model. but it is an answer. And I think you continue to see across the political spectrum, Democrats to Republicans, there's strong and continued support for the critical federal level programs that will continue to incentivize the growth of the P3 market. TIFIA, WIFIA are two examples.
Who are those? You just described a couple of them there, but who really are those big supporters that are going to push this through, that make things happen? Because up to this point, we've got a failing infrastructure. And I don't want to sound like the pessimist, but unless we really push forward, get more aggressive, we're going to be still the status quo. We haven't been able to make change, and we are going to have a critical, catastrophic event, and I don't want to see that happen. But who are these big supporters in the House, that we're going to see? The Democrats, the Republicans, who are they that are going to make something happen on the P3 side?
There is not one particular person, because you can't necessarily name them for sure. But I worked up there for a long time in a congressional office. Change comes when the governors and the mayors and the city council people call their elected members of Congress and say, we need help. And that's what they're doing out there. And I think what we're continuing to see, again, across the political spectrum, on the Senate side, for example, we're already seeing some work out there within the Republican-controlled Senate, and also on the Democratic side in the House. Chairman DeFazio, Chairman Neal are kind of on the Ways and Means and on transportation infrastructure. They are both interested in getting a deal done with the president this year, and I think you're going to continue to see Leader McConnell and others in the Senate on a bipartisan basis try to get these types of programs done to help move this P3 market forward.
Is there a specific message that resonates with either side that really gets them going and says, now I will do something that helps on the local level, on the regional level, that says, now I want to make something happen and we will do something more aggressively?
I think people just want to get things done. And I think at the end of the day, the message is that P3 is going to help you get large projects off the books and into the ground. Get people moving faster than before, improving our water quality better before, public buildings, better, more of them out there. I think people want to get things done. And I think while sometimes P3 takes a bit longer on the front end to get things done, we're talking about pulling forward projects 10 years, 20 years, 30 years within the state's procurement cycles. And I think that is a very attractive prospect for legislators at the federal level. They also like out there the concept of the risk transfer. Everyone sees so many of these infrastructure projects late and over budget. We can't accept that anymore as Americans. I don't think American voters are going to continue to accept that. And when they see the P3 promise out there that a lot of these risks, since we're talking about construction tech here, a lot of these risks can be transferred appropriately to the private sector, that is an important selling point for a lot of these projects.
Is that what we're saying is working versus what's not? I mean, are there specific things in your mind that you say that's where we see the success happens versus the failure when we talk about these things?
I think, I like to talk about success, as you can tell here, and I think we're talking about—
I love it. Positive thinking. Positive thinking.
I think we're talking about bundled projects. You look at that Pennsylvania Rapid Bridges project. When you saw, a lot of you go talk to a lot of, quote, red state legislators, they'll say P3 doesn't work here because we don't like toll roads. First, I love that question, because then we can talk about what the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has done. They have taken 500 plus bridges, they have bundled those together, and they have gotten those things pulled forward, and there's not a single toll on any of those projects out there. We're also looking at things that we're talking about, big rural water projects out there. I mean, at the end of the day, it is going to be critical that the rest of America, not just the coasts where we've seen a lot of the P3 activity through the years, that the rest of America sees that this is a procurement tool to advance projects off the books and into the ground to get America moving.
So then what are you hearing that cities and states are telling Congress that they need most? Is it roads? Is it rails? What is it that they need most when it comes to this?
Well, first of all, they need money. And that's the first thing they always—
Everybody needs money. We all need money. We reign in money, right?
Everybody needs money, but they also need things done faster. And I do credit the administration greatly for their emphasis, as have previous leaders on the Hill, focusing on getting the permits done faster. That is a critical point because the mayors and the governors are tired of waiting for the federal government.
And we're seeing some progress there, right? We're seeing progress on the permitting side.
You're seeing the one federal decision being pushed throughout the administrative agencies. That's making a real change out there, I would argue, if only sending the message to the average government employee that we're not going to put up with too many delays. People have just reached their limit in terms of patience. We have got to get these projects going.
Are we seeing enough progress, though, to make dramatic change so that we can see improvement in infrastructure, that we can say we're going in the right direction fast enough to make things happen the way we need, with the money we need to make the changes we need?
Again, an interesting question. I've read an interesting article this morning that talks about the increased spending at the state and local level on infrastructure across the country. It's one of the things that continues to bolster local economies out there because state coffers, for example, are doing better than they have been in recent years. That's a real improvement towards getting more projects done. At the federal level, we've got the FAST Act that's going to be reaching expiration point in 2020. That's going to be an opportunity to reauthorize some of these important programs out there, such as TIFIA. We've also got this important infrastructure initiative that's going to have a lead in the House here. And I think that's where the debate about funding is going to take place. Because at the end of the day, we've got to address the Highway Trust Fund in some form or fashion on the transportation side. And I think once that gets done, once we address the actual funding portion of this thing, the rest of it is going to fall into place very nicely on the financing side, which is so critical on the P3 front.
Well, Marshall Macomber, I love your enthusiasm. The Senior Policy Advisor for the Association for the Improvement for American Infrastructure. Keep up all the hard work. We love having you on the show.
Thanks, Peggy. Talk with you soon.
Public and private partnerships are one of the next great frontiers to rebuild our infrastructure. Everything from roads and bridges to the smart grid. If we are going to see more electrified vehicles on the road, first we need to build the infrastructure. To chat about this, I'm joined with Ashley Horvat, Vice President of Public and Private Partnerships at Greenlots. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. It's so nice to talk to you again.
So Ashley, let's talk a little bit about Greenlots and how public and private partnerships are factoring into everything that we've been talking about.
Yeah, so Greenlots is in a leading position in the electric vehicle charging technology sphere. We have been leading grid-enabled technologies that connect the grid to EV chargers that are going out. And I think at this point in the development of the market, most people are familiar with EV chargers, but Greenlots has been working at it for quite a bit of time. And so we have the ability to work with both public and private sector, but over the course of the industry, the combination of the public sector and private sector enabling the technology to grow, and then also the deployment of the technology, getting things in the ground and getting policy enacted that enables even further development there has been where Greenlots has thrived. And so with recent developments, it allows us to scale at a much larger clip. And basically, we have access to multiple technologies, and what's driving that is just the public-private partnership, but also the open standards technology that allows that to happen, and working with multiple entities like municipalities and different private sector enterprise fleet partners. So there's quite a bit of a diverse customer base, and so there's the need to connect all of those players under one technology umbrella, and that's what Greenlots is providing.
So let's talk a little bit more about that, because when you talk about open standards, that's really critical when we're talking about EVs and really pushing things forward. Explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, so open standards, actually the leading communication protocol is basically called OCPP, Open Charge Point Protocol. And that was, Greenlots was one of the co-founders of that through the Open Charge Alliance. And what that enables us to do is to directly connect the back-end network software to the chargers. And so that provides a simple communication protocol that all of the manufacturers as well as network providers are speaking the same language. So what that ends up doing is allowing different partners who select the network or select the manufacturer to be a part of that system. So it's more of a system approach, and what that provides, it flexibility. It provides choice, which is extremely important in this market because we've seen big and small companies come and go. And so it's really necessary to have a simple platform that enables that choice. And then, more importantly, I believe it also allows the scale that is needed. We're at like 1% market share at this point in some parts of the country. And so we're talking about going from early adopters to early majority and beyond. And so the sophistication and the breadth of knowledge and technology advancement is really important. And to do that at scale, you need to all be speaking the same language. And so that kind of gets that interoperability question. And so the users are insulated from that, but on the back end, all of the partners are somewhat working together. And I've seen that really, I think it's stimulated competition, to be honest, because having all of these manufacturers within that protocol speaking that language, where we can bring in multiple manufacturers, we can kind of start to whittle down the technology that works best for different consumers. And we've seen different manufacturers work better for some customers and others. It just depends on what the functionalities are. So it really drives home that competition, and we can be a little bit more working directly with our partners to provide the best in service.
Now, you and I both know Tesla's not been a part of this yet. ChargePoint's still hanging out. But ultimately, they're going to have to come to the table and say they've got to be a part of this, especially when we talk about trying to do common standards. And you and I both know interoperability is where the construction industry really wants common data standards and things that help make things a little bit easier when we talk about interoperability. Do you see them maybe at some point having to kind of, I don't want to use the word cave, but having to agree that standards are a better way to go?
Yeah, I think with Tesla, it's a little bit different because the way that they came out with their charging infrastructure in concert with their vehicles and providing that as sort of a package deal. And they were in the forefront with the development of their charging standard. So there's different standards on the network, but then standards on the actual plug. And so with their network locking it in, it's kind of that free access, and they believe they had a superior product, and they believe at the time the Chatamo and others that came out wasn't up to par.
So now you're just kind of trying to be nice about them. You just don't want to say Tesla because they came out first. They're the big dog in this and the big dog in the hunt here.
Well, I've been working with Tesla in every role that I've had. I've worked with Tesla, and I think they've done a lot for the industry. I do think that they are going to have to widen their reach and expanse, and I think that they know that, and that is on the trajectory. I think they've been trying to move so quick, and they're starting out, as a new company, a new car company, trying to focus on producing the cars. I think they've always wanted the market to grow, because that helps them improve their process. So in terms of like the actual charging network standards, I think that will eventually grow. I think that's just a natural evolution for Tesla. In terms of the competition with other, partners like ChargePoint and others, I think they will need to eventually look to going where the tides are turning in an open standard direction, because the access to data, the need for example, today I was on a call with a city that was trying to plan for their future. And it's really difficult when you have multiple networks that are all kind of have their data, but you can't combine it all.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about that. I didn't mean to interrupt, but rebuilding an infrastructure. Because a lot of people don't understand. You can't just say we're going all EV. There's infrastructure that has to be built, and I think a lot of people don't understand that. We have to do a lot of work there. Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, so like, for example, a city that's kind of looking at planning from this juncture, there were cities that were planning much earlier in the process. They were able to get permitting in place. They were able to get all of their internal mechanics sort of prepared and EV ready. It was called basically EV-ready communities. But cities that are coming into it now have a little bit of an advantage because they can look back at other cities that have been the first movers and really learn lessons and try to figure out what were the pain points. But they need to look at what the existing infrastructure is now and determine, is that adequate? Was it located in the right parking lot? Was that just put in because somebody raised their hand first? And so companies that have been in this space have been extremely competitive with getting the chargers out, but were those the right chargers, and are they functioning properly? And so the planning process kind of goes back to that data and interoperability. And for a utility, planning is essentially tantamount to ensuring that we have a future connected smart grid connected EV charging landscape. And so having that OCPP, whether it's Greenlots or another network, really enables that to really happen at scale.
Where are we right now to really looking at trying to get us all getting to a greener world, getting us to an EV world that we want? I mean, we've seen some car companies saying they've got initiatives. They want to go EV, and that's where they're going to be. And we've seen 2025, 2050 statements being made. Are we really going to be able to build these infrastructures? And you have to have a strategy in place. You have to build for these things and talk about it. Are we now at least talking about it, that these things can happen and we can start building towards that effort?
We are definitely, that is happening. I've been in it for a decade. I've never seen more serious investment. We have been pushing utilities to get involved from a long time, both when I was at the public sector and in the private sector, because we believe that they're absolutely critical to enabling the adoption. From a standpoint of an automaker, I mean, you've seen all the announcements. They're putting in so much R&D. They've been working at this for a while. Each car company, Nissan isn't going to be selling anything other than electric after a certain point in time. I believe it's 2021. Ford has come out with some really big proclamations. GM, of course, with CEO Mary Barra, been at the forefront there. And we're working with several automakers on plug and play and figuring out how that technology interplay between the charger and the car could be more seamless. And so it's not a question of if it's happening, it's just a matter of how rapidly. Being that it's technology, it's happening a lot quicker. It's a car, but it's essentially a cell phone on wheels at this point. But there's so much changing in the landscape as far as mobility. And so within that picture, where EVs play is, some cities don't want cars in their city at all. They just want transit. The nice thing about electrification is you have electric buses. So you can have a full suite of electrification, from buses to cars, to delivery vehicles, how you get your postage delivered. I think whether people believe it or not, everybody's going to have they're going to touch some level of electrification, just like we all pay for the roads, whether we use them or not, right? We're paying for it so ambulances can get to us and our mail can be delivered. And so the electrification space is going to be so much broader than we can even imagine. In terms of can we get there at the pace that we need to get there, I think that with the recent acquisition of Greenlots from Shell, it signals that, entities that have been around for a while in different areas than we would consider within electrification are seeing this as a movement in the market, and it's enough to invest in. And so I think with that level of seriousness and sophistication and investment happening, it will turn quick, and it will be done very intelligently and at a pace at which is dictated by both the automakers, the utilities, and most importantly, the consumers.
And we're going to see a lot of building that's going to have to work around this. We're going to see a lot of things change, the way our communities, the way we do things. So it's going to be an interesting time. Ashley Horvat, Vice President of Public and Private Partnerships at Greenlots, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
All right, there you have it. We're going to see a lot of changes coming quickly. I would like to challenge all of you in the industry a little bit now. Many of you might remember Audi's commercial that aired during the Super Bowl. It claims that 1/3 of all new Audi models will be electrified by 2025. This is a huge undertaking, but they're not alone. A lot of car companies are also going at this number right now. In order to enable that, we need to build the infrastructure. And that is just one example of many that have this grand vision. What is this grand vision? But what I do love the most about it is you have to have a grand vision. But how can you say you're going to do this digitization without having the infrastructure to achieve it? So here's my first tip for you today. Companies thinking about this need to establish the building blocks to get there. P3 is one of the building blocks that we need to dissect even more. Hopefully this episode has given you a good launching point to get this conversation started. We also need to put standards in place for the future. But before I close, I have another example, the Open Charge Alliance. This is a consortium of public and private EV infrastructure leaders. They have all come together to promote open standards through the adoption of the Open Charge Point Protocol and the Open Smart Charging Protocol. We need more efforts such as this to move towards an open standards. In fact, I encourage you to check out our sister websites at connectedworld.com and the PeggySmedleyShow.com for more details. You'll see open source is one focus on these websites that we have, and the podcast this month as well. Open source is important to build our infrastructure, our grid, our roads, our bridges, and the list goes on and on. Companies, government, and individuals have to think about how they can work together to develop a strategy. How do you develop this direction for tomorrow? You have to build the foundation first. As I've said time and time again, the speed of change is only going to get faster and faster. We need to think about which building blocks are going to be the most important for us to construct a truly smart city, a smart infrastructure for the future. And it all starts now. And thanks for watching Construct Tech TV, your fierce advocates for construction.